And Adam said he was going to sign up. He just he asked for a specific job. I don't know that if we can get him that specific job, but he said he was going to put his application in.
Hose man. The guy hoses, you know, when they're pulverizing concrete.
Yeah.
The guy from today, the guy, it was amateur hour over there. The guy was like leaning back, thinking about it. I'm like, you know, this is my hose, my position. And by the way, I can go southpaw because sometimes the wind changes and
How many can?
Well, I used to box, you know, and then sometimes step back. You know what I mean? So I'm prone, and then the wind shifts, and then I slide this foot up, and again, it's core. It's a core. You guys are in the core. It's a core strength. It's a core. So they call it core, and I bring it down. So I'm just telling. I don't know if you know the guy, but tell him I'm nipping at his heels, man. And his hose work was subpar, and look, as a taxpayer, you know, I'm kind of paying the guy to hose. I mean, not directly, but you know what I'm saying. So just tell him to kind of up his game, and I'll be checking in periodically. I'm not going to tell him when. I just want to get up in his head a little bit, all right?
That's good. Keep him on his toes.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
All right, Nate, we'll see you, Ian.
See you guys.
So how that works is like Nate, he's from New Orleans, Ian's from Galveston, Texas.
Oh, wow.
We're from Memphis, so they just kind of, we parcels together, so.
Pretty nice. Oh, these guys. Now, are these are your guys?
Yeah, these are our guys. RCI is the main sub that does the coastal properties.
You got the...
That's right.
Wow. That is quite...
So he's cutting metal down there too, it looks like.
All right.
See him right there?
Yeah. But look. She's sitting. Some of the worst hose work I've ever seen. She's not even.
He's trying.
It's a joke. It's a joke.
Everyone wants to know how quickly can this entire debris removal process, how long it can take. There's some things that are certainly out of our control. So there's an election system going on right now where we still have to abide by private property rules. And so if you want to opt into the Corps program, you have got to opt in. And there's a little bit of legal work that needs to be done on that end to opt in. Folks can also opt out and perform the work themselves.
How many parcels are we talking about here?
So the number of parcels always adjusts a little bit because some parcels are not going to be deemed eligible because they didn't have enough destruction. That's a horrible way of putting it, but they're not deemed destructed enough to have federal assistance. So You're looking at something south of 6,500 parcels in the entirety of the Palisades fire, which includes Palisades, unincorporated, and Malibu.
Malibu, Palisades, 6,500 lots for you guys to get to.
Or if you opt out, yeah.
Or if you opt out. What's the average time it takes you to clear a parcel?
Up here in the Palisades, I mean, if you have a relatively small lot with a no basement, not a lot of elevation work, that's a day operation.
One day.
One day. The complexity as it moves up with the property, if you go over to Malibu and you're on the hillside and you are multi-tiered with concrete caissons, that might be 5 days, might be 6, might be 7 days. So it depends on the complexity of the property.
What's the basic timeline? Like, when do you think this is going to be wrapped? When are those scales and pulverizers going to move?
As the sun rose this morning, we had about 3,800 properties that have opted in out of that 6,500. So those that have opted in, of those, we've cleared over 500 already. Now, but that's the early ramp-up stages. We're rapidly building capacity. We're now routinely clearing over 30 properties, here in the last couple of days, over 35 properties a day, which gets you 1,000 properties in a month. So we have to maintain above 1,000 properties in a month, and then you can clearly do the math. You get 4 months from now, it's a different world up here.
In my neighborhood, there are many homes that cantilever out over the side of the hill. How do they approach that?
So you're going to see large-scale cranes brought in for those particularly complex properties. You're going to see long-arm reach excavators that can be brought in if we got to, and in some cases, we might even have to build platforms to bring that machinery up a little bit higher or stabilized above the property. And then we also have rope crews. We have in the Palisades today, we got guys that are on ropes by hand collecting debris on the side of the hill. So
wow.
There's many different ways that it will be done, but,
yeah.
And that gets to the point of the more complicated the property, obviously the more time, and the bulk of the clearance by midsummer, different world up here, but you're going to still have some challenges on the back half there.
Well, I'll tell you, as a guy who's worked in Chatsworth and Simi Valley during July and August and September and never any air conditioning, at least you got a little ocean breeze coming in, which might not sound like much, but I'm telling you, if we were doing this and you're in the hubs of hell in the San Fernando Valley, it was 115 degrees and the air was thick, this would really suck really badly. Being 68 degrees and a little breeze coming off the Pacific is real helpful with these kinds of jobs, because these are dirty and dusty and all exterior.
We're still in what we call the ramp-up period right now.
So you've not hit your full capacity yet.
We're getting close to 70% of where we think we're going to be at. And so we got another 30% to go. And
well, is that meaning more equipment here, or what is that 30%?
More equipment, more crews.
Okay.
So trained heavy equipment operators, as you know very well, that's a premium. So you got to get the heavy equipment operators, and you got to get the equipment. And then you got to bring them on and train them to exactly what they're going to do. Most of the crews that we have here have been on site now for 45 days. A lot of these crews did work at the most recent large-scale wildfire disaster in Maui. Mm-hmm. And so, and the same general contractor partnered with the Corps and worked Maui as well. So at scale, this is the biggest wildfire response the Corps has ever had. And so we're continuing to scale up, and it takes a little bit of time.
So this is all civilian in terms of the guys driving the trucks, working the pulverizer. These are all civilian contractors. How many of the Corps members, the Army Corps of Engineers, are here, and then what is their role?
Corps of Engineers, you got around 250 folks. It's a very, very thin administrative piece of that. But most of the folks that are out here are essentially observing the contract, quality assurance folks. So they're trained to observe the contract on the behalf of the government. Like a lot of construction operations with the government, a separate company is hired by the general contractor to perform quality checks, and then the government is watching everybody, watching those that are checking and doing the quality assurance. And so we have to administer the contract and make sure that the work is performed to standard and in accordance with the contract. So the folks that you see wearing the castles are those that are monitoring the contract for the most part.
Wow. Yeah, I don't think I ever gave it any thought. I mean, I've heard Army Corps of Engineers 1,000 times, but I never really thought, what does that really mean? Like, who are they? Are they building? Are they supervising? But in this application, and as in most, it's really civilian contractors that the Army Corps is implementing.
It certainly is a partnership. And so like Temescal Canyon Road here, this is owned by the city of Los Angeles. And so the Corps, as a federal entity here, is going to liaison with the city and bring up the topic of, hey, this would be ideal for this operation, and kind of smooth the road for our contractor and break down friction. The other point is, you could pick the trade or you can pick the skill set. We have that. We can bring them out there to supplement everything that we're doing. So when we're looking at coastal properties or these properties, we're bringing our own engineers in as well to oversee this very technical work.
Are those people trained in the Army to be, geologists and mechanical engineers and metallurgists, or are they coming from the private sector into the Army?
Private sector or academia. I mean, we're gonna hire them right out of school as a civil engineer, as an example, or they could come out of private industry as well, and they'll be a Department of Army civilian. And that's the backbone of the Corps. 40,000 folks, over 90% of those are civilians, commanded by uniformed officers and non-commissioned officers. And so you'll get a sprinkling of us in uniform out there as well.
If you're a guy who graduated as a structural engineer right out of college or civil engineer, and you got an idea of what kind of money you could make in that private sector, can the Army be competitive with that in terms of attracting them to come into the Corps?
To be frank, no doubt, recruitment is always a challenge because those skill sets are highly desired by industry as well. To your point, the Army is competitive on entry-level engineering positions and mid-grade engineering positions. The other thing that you have working for the Army is you can have a breadth of experience and opportunities out there you're not going to necessarily find in a regional firm. For example, you could be sitting in Memphis, Tennessee, working on levees as part of the federal project for flood risk mitigation, get a phone call, come out here to Los Angeles and look at coastal stabilization as well, or go forward when we're deployed in Iraq and help us fix a dam. So you can have that host of opportunities that a lot of firms cannot necessarily give you. So you can get a wealth of experiences as a young engineer that you may not get on the outside.
And then at some point take that with you, possibly to the private sector.
Sure, we want them to stay, but yes.
What do you know about seawalls and septic systems and caissons and elevations in terms of the places that are going along the side of the ocean, on the ocean side of PCH?
Yeah, so especially for the coastal properties, what you're alluding to here, there was an array of differing seawalls that were over time connected together by the private property owners, certainly over the decades. I know some of the construction here exceeds over 100 years that were on the coastal side in Malibu. Seawalls, septic tanks, caissons, anything that goes subsurface, when we go to coastal debris removal, we're incredibly careful with. We're going to have a lot of consultations with the owner. In many cases, the owner may not know where the septic is or know exactly how far their seawall goes into the ground. And so we're incredibly conservative with anything that's going to prevent coastal erosion or contributes to soil stabilization. So many of those subsurface structures, for the most part, we're going to leave in place and then need to get addressed during the construction phase. Those little black dots, that's your density of destruction.
Oh,
so,
wow.
You're obviously, that's why you have 80% right here. This is the Marquez community coming up.
Oh,
here.
yeah,
This
I've
is
not
where they
been
had
up here.
This is where they have we're going to pass on the right-hand side. You'll see that elementary school that was unfortunately almost a complete loss. And that debris removal has been complete. And in the neighborhood, you're going to see some work being done actively in the neighborhood as well.
Where's the school?
It's coming up on the right.
It's coming up on the right.
School's complete. All the debris removal on Marquez is complete.
So there were structures all through here.
So where you see a footprint
like
that's missing.
bungalows.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's what they had up here. It's 3 tiers.
This is crazy. This is pretty nuts right in here. You must hear those beeps in your sleep, man.
They're not too loud, not terrible.
This guy's not that bad.
This property owner here opted into the program, and so by virtue of that, there's a series of steps that we go through before we get into actual debris removal. So there will be a certified asbestos consultant that comes out here and that surveys the property and if necessary tests the property. If it needs to go through an abatement process, that is included. There's also going to be a site assessment done on this property. An arborist comes out and assesses all the trees to assess whether they're going to die in the next 5 years and pose a hazard. All that gets compiled into the ultimate debris removal, which is the heavy machinery that you see that comes in that does the bulk of the removal of the material. And those are divided into waste streams. And so you're going to have, out of this footprint, you're going to have fire ash debris, you're going to have clean concrete that gets washed on site, you're going to have metals, you're going to have green waste. As said earlier, if you did have asbestos materials, those are removed before any of those other waste streams. And then all those waste streams go to different disposal facilities here in Southern California.
So this one obviously didn't make it, and you're going to get to this one if it's on your roster, but this one you guys worked on.
That's correct.
So you cleared it, and then what is on the perimeter?
So on the perimeter, that's a wattle system for erosion control. So you have some organic wood chipping in there to keep essentially the parcel in place where it's at. And then there's a hydromulching that's sprayed on top, again, to stabilize the soil and keep in place until they can reconstruct.
And this is good for how many rainstorms? The hydromulch.
It's resistive to having the soil move around, and it's going to be good for a period of months, but it's going to be variable in terms of temperature and amount of storms, and so, but essentially it should be good for several months.
And so you came here, cleared out this structure, put the mulch on, put the perimeter on, your work is done here. and you go on to the next parcel.
Yeah, so this is some of the last stages that occur at a parcel. There may be some tree removal that needs to occur as well as part of this parcel. That usually tends to be towards the end. And then essentially after that, there's a final walkthrough that we do with the contractor, we do with the county. We write up a report, we give that report to the county that ultimately is then in the possession of the owner as well.
Wow, and everything, but yet not that. It's incredible. You know what I don't get? And I've seen this a lot. You got the chimney there, right? You got the fireplace down there low, and then you got another fireplace like up on the roof or like up on the ceiling. Who would do that? Like, you'd have to get a ladder to put a log up there. Like, why would you build a house where you put a fireplace up on the ceiling that way?
It's a two-story structure.
Okay, now it makes sense.